Hi everyone, this is Dawn. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to show you how to do the bokeh technique for card making. And what the bokeh technique is, it's a photography term. It refers to the blur that's produced in out of focus areas of an image. And it's the way the lens renders out of focus points of light. So let's get started. I've got some white daisy cardstock, and you can either use the stencil film from Close to My Heart, or you can use some clear acetate transparency paper. And I have cut these on my Cricut. They're just a variety of circle sizes, or you can use a circle punch, or you can use circle dies to cut and just make your stencil. So I'm going to tack down this piece of white daisy cardstock with repositionable Tombow tape, and I'm using my Tim Holtz platform. So I'm going to start with a variety of blues here. I'm using Carolina, Bluebird, and Sapphire. And I'm using blending brushes. You can use a blending sponge if you prefer, or sponge tools, whatever you're most comfortable using. I want it to get a soft wash of colors, so that's why I'm using my blending brushes. So I'm just going and putting colors, areas of color down on my white daisy cardstock, starting with the lightest, and then I'm gonna go forward to the darkest, and then I'll go back and forth and bring some light back in, and just kind of putting different areas of color down on my panel here. And then in between, if I go from a dark color to a lighter color, I'm wiping it off with my microfiber cleaning cloth there. So I'm just going back and forth and putting areas of color down on this panel until I'm happy. And there's no right or wrong, just put your color down. I like to choose 3 colors in kind of the same color family to do my panels with, just that so that you choose colors that you won't get like a muddy blend when you put them together. Okay, so I'm wiping everything down with my cleaning cloth, and then I'm going to bring my heat tool in to set the panel, the ink on the panel there. And then I'm going to bring in my white daisy pigment ink and my stencil. And now I'm using a sponge tool to apply this. And I want soft edges, so I'm not really concerned with getting my stencil exactly placed. And then as I move things around, if I've got an intense area around the edge, I'm bringing in my cleaning cloth and just kind of buffing the edges of the circles down. You don't want crisp circle images, you want them to be soft. So I'm just kind of going around and doing a variety of shapes, or not shapes, but sizes of the circles, and trying to make them look really random. And you just keep going until you're happy with the final result. And I'm doing a lot of circles off of the edges of the paper because that adds to the randomness. And just keep going until you're happy with the result. So that looks good. Maybe not. One more. And then I'm kind of buffing out the edges, and I'll bring my heat tool in to set that pigment ink. And that's the first panel. And I'll just wipe everything down. And now I'm taking the temporary tape off of the back of my panel with a rub and remove eraser. And then I'll wipe down all of my tools. And then we'll get ready to do our next panel. So I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to tack down my piece of white daisy cardstock, and now I'm using a variety of sea greens. This one is mint, and then I'm going to use lagoon and peacock. And I'm just wiping my blending brushes on the cleaning cloth. You don't have to take them and wash them with soap. Just give them a quick wipe down, especially when you're working with colors that are kind of in the same family. And so I'm just taking the mint and placing it on my white daisy cardstock, and then I'll go in with lagoon. I'm going to do the same thing as we did with the previous panel. I've sped this up pretty quick. So you may have noticed that pink one that's up in the left corner. That one will be featured on a future video. I made a whole bunch of them all at the same time. So now I'm just going back and forth, and again, if you're going from the darker color to a lighter color, make sure that you wipe your tool down on the cleaning cloth, just so that you don't contaminate your ink pad with a darker color. So I'm just blending in the mint with the lagoon, and then I'll bring in some peacock. And if you tap it off on the media mat before you bring it to your piece of white daisy cardstock, it kind of helps with not having as concentrated of a color on the edges of your cardstock. And so that's why I'm tapping it off in that area before I bring it to my art panel. So I'm just going back and forth to get kind of a variety of colors. So get all those colors down, and then I'm going to bring my heat tool in and set everything. Okay, so then we're ready to start applying the white pigment ink. And it's the same thing as before. I'm just setting down my stencil and doing a wash of white pigment circles over the whole panel. And again, softening up those darker edge lines with my cleaning cloth and just kind of buffing it out as I go when I see some more intense areas. Okay, I'm gonna set it with my heat tool, and that panel's all done. Okay, let's make some cards. So I'm using the April stamp of the month. It's called O-Fishally Awesome, and it's got all of these fish and fishbowl images. So I have embossed this piece of white daisy cardstock with the Under the Sea embossing folder, and then off camera I have stamped and colored in some of these fish images. So I'm just kind of figuring out the placement of my bokeh panel on the embossed white daisy piece. I'm going to set it there at an angle. So I'm putting it down with Tombow. And then I'll trim off that excess that hangs over the edge of the panel there. And I'll use those for something else. So that's the card base, and then I've got some scrap pieces of holographic paper, and they were what was left over after I cut some stitched rectangles out, and I needed that corner edge to make it continuous. So I'm just taking this little bit and I'm going to tuck it under the edges of the bokeh panel. And it's a little fussy. Let me get it all tucked under there. I just want a little border. So I'm getting it all tucked in, and then I'll trim off those excess pieces there. Okay, so now I am going to stamp my sentiment, and I'm going to emboss it with white detail powder. So I'm using my anti-static tool, and then I'm going to stamp my sentiment down. And it's a little tricky because you're working with an angled piece, but you want the sentiment to be straight, so I got it in there. So I stamped it with the Versamark ink, and then I'm going to sprinkle white daisy embossing powder over it. And that holographic paper, it's pretty staticky, so I had to bring in my a dry paintbrush to brush off the excess powder that stuck to it. So now I'm hitting it with my heat gun and melting that embossing powder. So I have a white sentiment on my card there. Okay, and then I'm going to attach my card front to a top folding A2 size card, and I'll just tack that down with Tombow. Okay, let's get some fish on there. So I've fussy cut these fish images, and I'm going to attach them with thin foam tape. And I'll skip ahead, you don't have to watch me applying the foam tape to the fish. So I'm gonna put those guys on the front of my card. And then I have these cool, they're water droplets. They're from Dress My Crafts. And I'm going to apply them the same way that I apply jewels or crystals to the card. I'm going to scatter them around, and then I'm going to glue them down with Aqua Tombow glue. So I'm just kind of randomly spacing them out, and there's that finished card. All right. So that's the first one. So let's make another one. So here's the other blue. So now I went ahead and I embossed that sentiment on that card panel before tacking it down to my card, my embossed card front. It was a little bit easier that way. So now I thought I would try putting the holographic paper down first and layering from that. There's no right or wrong or specific order, just whatever gets everything down on your card front. So that seemed to work a little bit easier. And then I'll layer my bokeh panel on top of that, tacking everything down with Tombow tape runner. So this card is going to be the same design as the other one. So I'm getting everything placed on my card front, and then I'll trim off that excess. And I'm going to save it because I'll use it for something else. And this one is also going to be a top folding A2 size card. So I'm going to attach that panel to my card front with Tombow tape runner. And I've already colored and fussy cut the fish out, and I've added foam tape to them as well. So I'm going to go ahead and attach those to my card front. And then I'll put some of those water droplets on as well. So the stamp of the month is available during the month of April, and it is $5 with a $50 purchase. And you can go to my online store and make your purchase, and then drop this stamp set into your cart when you make your purchase. I appreciate you spending some time and watching my video today. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I'll make a list of all the supplies in the description below. And thanks for watching.